Hey guys, so today I am starting the 5th season by N.K. Jemisin for my N.K. Jemisin read-along for the year of 2023, and I'm so excited. You guys know, if you've been paying attention to my channel, I decided to take on a massive project this year where I was going to read everything that N.K. Jemisin has written, because she is one of those authors I've heard so many good things about, and she's a person of color author that writes fantasy, which is incredibly difficult to get into because of the fact that the fantasy genre tends to be taken over by white men. So very excited to get into this series. I decided to start off with the 5th season too for this read along because it is one of her most popular series that there is and is one of the most beloved of her series. So I have so far got through the first 42 pages of this and I am already loving it. I don't know why I'm so surprised by that. I knew I was going to really like her work, but I just love how this is, for one, written in a very different format, because part of the story is being told in a second-person format where you are, as the reader, seeing through the eyes by basically being told what you're doing. And their name is Esun, and what you learn at the very beginning is Esun's son was murdered by her husband, Jija, and you find out that both Esun and her son, Yuche, were basically what are called origins, or origenes, which are basically magic individuals. They are some kind of magic wielding people in this world, and essentially it's because in this world the origins are not well looked upon. They are looked at as, you know, very poorly. They basically are considered monsters in a sense, and I'm not sure whether that's because they believe that they will be bringing about the end of times, but essentially what happens is that when Uche is killed, there is this thing called a shake that happens, which is essentially what I would think of as like an earthquake. And it happens and it causes this massive amount of strife across the different cities in this world. And when Esun is taken away from her home by a man named Lerna, who is a doctor and is presiding over Uche's body, basically, he tells her, as he is one of the only people that knows that Esun is an origin, that she needs to get away. She needs to run away. And essentially, there is a lot of stuff going on right now. Like, there are people who are displaced from their homes that are from, like, I guess, the capital city of this world. And essentially, there's a lot of stuff going on where it is likely that Esun is going to be found out about being an origin, and so she has to get away as fast as she can. The problem is, though, is that Esun is now also looking for her daughter, who is missing. She believes that while Jija also had killed her son, he has stolen away her daughter, and she has to go find her. Now, there's another perspective in this that is from the character of Demaya, who is a young girl who also is an origin. And she essentially is, you find her locked up in a barn by her parents because something happened that basically proved that she was an origin. And so her parents locked her away in this barn and sent off for somebody to come get her, to take her away. And this man named Safka, he is basically called a guardian, and he is somebody that will find these children who are origins and take them to this capital city to essentially be put to use, where they will train with their powers and then be used somehow in current society. It's basically like a way to make use of the origins since they are around without really killing them. Now, I don't know whether or not this is a type of slavery that's involved in this world. It's not painted so far as that, but I would not be surprised if that is what will end up happening, is that you will see Demaya go through this very slave-like situation where the origins are being targeted for their powers, and so they then will basically be essentially like used for the world's purpose, as opposed to allowing them to live on their own peacefully. Like, they will be basically a means to an end. So far though, I love the writing of this. N.K. Jemisin has a very beautiful writing ability. She has a very beautiful writing style, and I am so far smitten with this. Like, from the first not even 50 pages, I am in love with this story, and I greatly see why people latch onto this so easily. So I'm very excited to continue with this. But I will be checking in as often as I can on this, especially when I feel like I have things to say. But I will say that one of the things that, like I said earlier, is that this has a very biblical feel to it. Like, it is very apparent to me from just the prologue and just the way that the world was set up in this story, is it has a very biblical feel to it, while not necessarily like being directly delineated from Christianity. There are some things about the way that the world was created that does feel very biblical. Like I said, there's a guy that feels very much like a Moses character, and that could just be because, you know, there's a thing where he creates this set of stone tablets, and that's, you know, the first thing that comes to mind is Moses and the commandments, and they call them commandments as well. So I have a feeling that there was some, you know, biblical nature brought into this that I think does then later get expanded on, because I'd be willing to bet that there's more in terms of the setup of this world that's going to play into effect in why it is ending, like what basically was brought up about how the world would end for the last time. That's going to get brought up with Esun and maybe even Demaya, if Demaya has anything to do with any of it. So, good morning, everybody. It is Friday. I apologize if the camera shakes a lot. My husband had got a car mount thing for my phone, and it works on a magnet that is attached to my pop socket on the back of my phone. So if it moves, that's why. But I wanted to come on because, first of all, I have not really updated you guys much at all in the process of reading the 5th season. Quite honestly, when I kept reading this book, I just couldn't stop. And it was so good. So I finished it last night. I read the last, 100 and some pages last night because I had read 200 and some pages the other day. And oh my God, this was amazing. Like, I understand why so many people love this series because it's so good, at least the first book. So I'm not going to talk into anything in terms of spoilers right here because I don't know how many people have read this series. So I'm just going to talk as briefly as I can about it, basically what the plot is, and give you kind of some general thoughts on it. So basically, like I said, there is a whole perspective that is told in second person where you are basically walking through the shoes of a character named Esun, and it's not really clear why we get that perspective until much later, I will say. But Esun, you learn at the very beginning of the book, basically has found out that her husband had killed her son, who was found out to be an Origin, which is basically a type of magic wielding individual that is looked down upon in this world. They are looked at as basically monsters, if you will. And Esun apparently is also one of them, which is how her son had become one of them because of genetics. And then you also find out that her eldest child is missing. And she believes that her husband had either killed her and buried her somewhere, or he's kidnapped her. And it seems that, according to people in town who had seen her husband last, he took her away somewhere and she's not sure where. So she's basically, the course of this book, trying to find her daughter and basically also then bring justice to her son. And that's all I can say about her, essentially, because you get to parts of the book that are really important later on that I can't really divulge right now. And then you have the character of Demaya, who is a young girl who is basically finding out that she is an Origin. And essentially, she is taken away by what's called a guardian, who basically is somebody who finds Origins and then takes them to this capital city where they end up them being put to use in terms of for the government. They are used in some capacity, and Demaya is pretty much hoping that this is going to be a new start for her and starts going through school and stuff for that. And then the third and final character that we get the perspective of is named Cyanite, which I did not realize we were going to get into until the last time I had updated you guys. We had just gotten into a chapter with her. Cyanite is a more developed Origin. She's much more of a young adult kind of thing. And you find out that she is basically being put in this arranged marriage with who's this guy that's named Alabaster. He is called a Ten Ringer, where basically he is a really prolific Origin, and he's very good at his work. And he's kind of pretty up there, right? And Cyanite is being tasked then too with essentially procreating with Alabaster to produce more Origin progeny. And the two of them hate each other. Like, they do not like each other from the first instance that they meet, and so this is very much a marriage of convenience. Cyanite is trying to prove herself basically so that she can move up the ranks in terms of the Origins, and that's kind of like what their whole story is. So those are the three main characters of the entire story, and you kind of see how their stories start to intertwine, and it's a little confusing at first, and then you realize what's happening. And I kid you not, my mind was blown. Like, when I got to the very end of this book, my mind was completely blown. I had not expected the story to go in the way it did, and it was just so fascinating to see how N.K. Jemisin was able to create this story so fluidly and like really keep you on your toes, because like, for one, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of sex and a lot of violence, and granted too, I will say, the smut that was in this book was very, very nice. Very, very well done. Very hot. Very sexy. Like, goddamn. This was like, whew. I had to like go cool down for a second after getting through some of the scenes that were in this book. But it was very, very fun. I am so happy I decided to pick up N.K. Jemisin because I love the way she writes. I love the way she writes so much, and I'm so excited to continue with this series in particular, because I will say that there is room for other books in this series, but I'm curious as to what's going to be going on in the Obelisk Gate. Like I said, I wanted to close out this vlog because I don't want us to go into any spoilers for anything. I, though, wanted to express some thoughts on this, especially before I go do the live show, which is going to be on February 4th. So if you're going to come join me for that, we're going to be doing live shows for the books for the N.K. Jemisin read-along the first Saturday of every month. So make sure that you have obviously read the book, because we're going to go into some spoilers in the live show. So there's going to be some information that's going to be divulged, and if you haven't read it as of yet, you should before the live show. You've got a couple weeks still by the time this video goes out, so get that book read if you can, and come join me for the live show on February 4th. We're going to do it at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is going to be basically on my Friday nights. So I'm very, very excited for that. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. I hope you guys did enjoy it, even though I didn't really get much of a chance to talk to you because I was just eating through this book like nobody's business. But I'm so excited to continue, and I hope you guys enjoyed the book yourselves. Let me know what you think about it without any spoiling content in the comments below if you've read it and want to share your thoughts with me. I'm so excited. So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.